Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the I Am 1-2 podcast with your host, Christopher Cohn. With me, as always, is my good friend, the man in charge, the man with a plan, Dan the Man, in the studio, everybody. Say hello to the friends and families out there, Dan.
How's everybody doing today? I'm happy to be here and excited for delivering some more education this afternoon.
Hell yeah. We're both excited to be here because we've been off for just a little bit. It's been that time of year when Dan the Man loves to go on his hunting sabbaticals, and I just love that. When a guy in recovery honors the things he loves to do, and he sets boundaries around them, and he makes time for them, and he does not let these things fritter on the vine and waste away. And I find a lot of the unhappiness in the world comes from the fact that most people are not doing what they were meant to do, nor what they love to do in life. So good for you, Dan, for taking that time. Did you have a great time out there in the wild?
I've been having a great time, and I'm going to probably go get some more here over the weekend now that it's cooled off. And the whole time I was out, it was actually a little, as it is nowadays, a little unseasonably warm.
LJ was saying he's going to go back to Travis's this weekend, and he thinks because of the temperatures the herd should be on the move.
Yeah, it should have them moving better.
Best of luck to both you guys, and again, if there's anything that you love to do out there, please make sure you're making time and energy and space for it, because that is what you're going to remember on your deathbed. You will not remember your last paycheck. You will not remember your W-2 form. None of that stuff will matter to you. Mm-hmm. So if you're new to our podcast, welcome. We are an all things recovery podcast. Now you might be saying, what is that? Well, we have this beautiful thing called 12 Steps groups, and they're all over our world, and they're for just about any condition you can imagine. And we're going to make it so that they're for every condition you can imagine. And what we have is this real-life toolkit that's been proven through firsthand use as to I did this and it worked really well, and I did this and it blew up in my face, and then I did this and I got the kingdom, and I did this and it really sucked. And everything else out there is going to be a book based on theory, based on some sort of method, based on some sort of teachings that were formalized. But this is real life experience. And we have a toolkit in recovery that is infinite. I have been in recovery for over 40 years, and I have not found the bottom of this toolkit. I'm waiting to. And you know how I know that? Because I'll go to a meeting and I'll hear something new. And I'll be like, I never heard that before. And that's almost impossible with all the meetings I've been to and all the conventions and all the speakers I've heard, add it all up, whatever. So because it's a constantly evolving program, it's a living program. And as things come up in life, we have to deal with them. Things like marijuana being legal. There's going to be a new wrinkle on it, So if you want in, this podcast is a great doorway to get there, to get a little taste of the tools and hopefully help you on your personal journey of recovery. You are asking, what is recovery? To reclaim who you really are. Because underneath all this other stuff, your teachings, your ideologies, your beliefs, and everything that you've been taught by other human beings is an authentic you that's waiting to express itself and be happy. And it's getting crushed under the weight of these false selves, chasing things, following voices in your head that aren't really what you want out of life. It's not what's going to make you happy. So welcome. We hope you can get inspired to take your own personal journey of recovery to move forward. All right, well, let's get right to today's topic. I haven't told Dan the title yet, but I'm thinking the title is going to be, and it's going to have to be now since I'm going to say it on the air, Your Teachers Define Your Destiny. Your teachers define your destiny. So Dan and I and many people in the program talk a lot about the 12-step process is about going back and unwinding what happened to us. Let me go on this mystery tour to find out how in the hell did my life get here. And I know a majority of people out there that aren't walking around with smiles on their faces. They certainly don't look happy, joyous, and free. And I bet you if I got them to really be honest in a therapy session, they would admit, yeah, this is not exactly what I dreamed of when I was laying in bed with my stuffed animals, pulling my covers up to my nose and thinking about my future and how great it was going to be as a kid. Okay? Because why? Because the world happens, because people suck, because they're imperfect, and we have a lot of stuff to deal with, trauma, et cetera, et cetera. So all that stuff adds up and it sends you off course. So recovery is that taking the reins back, taking the steering wheel back and saying, no. This is my one and only life in this lifetime, in this sphere, on this planet, as far as we know. And I want to make the best of it. I want to be fulfilled. I want to feel like I have a sense of purpose and meaning with my life. I want to leave something behind of worth whatever that definition is for you. So I encourage you, jump on board with this. And a big part of the recovery process is finding out what kind of crap was I taught that has led me to this awful place, because it all comes from your teachers. Now, Dan and I will use multiple terms. We'll use training. We'll use the term conditioning, which is scientific. We all know that human behavior is conditioned by positive reinforcement, things like that. And then there's this thing called programming. And that's the stuff that happened all around you that you didn't have any choice in. You didn't choose to be with these people. You had no option. Like, I didn't get to choose my own family. We'll talk about that in a second. And you had to live with that, and you're absorbing all that, especially as a child, because a child is a sponge and just takes it all in and has no reference for discernment to be able to say, well, I don't know, that sounds like bullshit to me. Not when you're 4 years old, okay? And so you absorb all this, and then it becomes part of you, and you think it is you. But it's just what your teacher taught you. Now, this is the big disconnect that I run into with my patients in groups, is that they'll come in and they think they're driving the bus on their decision making and on their choices. And as the result of that, because of alcohol and drug use, they've got a lot of guilt and shame. They're beating the crap out of themselves, saying, I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have done this. And I'm like, well, you know what? You're a living animal. And I know our ego wants to fight that. Our ego and our rational mind wants to say, like Mr. Spock, oh no, I'm somehow above human. I'm not influenced by the things all around me. But it just doesn't work like that. So I try to encourage them, let's go on that journey and find out what your influences are, because the animal can only do as it was taught. If you ran across an animal that had bad behaviors, you wouldn't blame the damn pet. You would blame the owner. You would say, you're a bad dog owner to let your dog get away with that or not teach them better, right? So let's talk about this. Let's talk about first about our teachers that we had in the past and how we had to survive them and how we're still trying to survive them based on their influence they still have in my life today, right up here in my cortex, right up here in my limbic system. And let's talk about the teachers you can change and pick in recovery so that you get to choose your own destiny from here on out. Because I am going to tell you, just like the title says, your future, how much money you make, where you live, what kind of relationships you're going to have, whether you're going to end up lonely, all that shit comes down to your teachers and how they've conditioned your brain to what you'll accept and what you won't accept for yourself. It's real simple. Real simple. And I got to tell you, I've been to several trainings lately. I have to go to trainings for my licensure as a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor, and I have to do a lot of extra training hours. And the two I had recently, I'm going to try and share a lot in upcoming episodes. But it just convinces me more and more. It all goes back to what happened to us as children. What happened to us as children, what happened to us as children. And nobody wants to look at that. We all want to have this rational mind that says, but I'm an adult now, and I can think this through, and I've let that go, and it doesn't bother me anymore. It's BS. You know why? Because it comes out in your actions. Talk is cheap. Let's see what you do. And then I watch what you do for a week, and I can point out, there's that shit from childhood. There's your reaction to that from dad. There's what you're doing because of your mom's voice, and you're completely unaware of it. And therein lies the miracle of recovery. You can go on this therapeutic journey to unwind this mystery of, God, I've got these voices in my head, and they may not be serving me well. I might need to get rid of a lot of this crap. So let's go back. All right. So none of us that I'm aware of, if this was different for you, drop us a line at iam12recovery@gmail.com. I'm sorry, iam12recovery@gmail.com. If this was different to you, let me know. But for us, and everybody I know, we didn't have a choice up in heaven or wherever we were before we were born to choose our family. Like, would you like to go live with these people? This is what it looks like. Would you like to go live with these people? Would you like to go live in this country where it's poor and you're going to have nothing? Or would you like to live in this country of abundance? It's a lottery. Now I know a lot of spiritual teachers might say it's karma and you're working through your soul's journey and you pick these people. Let's put that aside for a second. Let's just say at least we didn't get to choose our teachers. If I had an option, I guarantee I would have chosen to have a father that was there for me rather than a father that was afflicted by alcoholism and was not able to be there for me. Okay, let's just get basic with it. So we are dealt with these teachers and we don't even realize we're swimming in what they were taught. And those people are swimming in what they were taught. And you go back 100 years, and I'm telling you, people had some really effed up ideas about human nature. This is almost like the advent of Freud and psychotherapy. We didn't have Oprah. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have any books. We had nothing to teach you about boundaries, to teach you about being authentic, to teach you how to unwind your trauma. None of that. And we're still in the dark ages. The stuff we're learning now about trauma and its effect on the brain and how it's going to affect you for the rest of your life is brand new. Just like only a decade old, maybe. So the great thing is we have all these tools. Will you pick them up to go on that journey to unwind this stuff? Because growing up in an alcoholic family system, I was taught some key elements that were going to define the rest of my life. And this happens to everyone that grows up in a dysfunctional and/or / alcoholic family system. Dysfunctional meaning that there's usually some sort of affliction in the family, some sort of pressure, some sort of influence that's negative. And so it could be mental illness, it could be drugs and alcohol, or it might be extreme poverty, things like that. There's trauma of some kind. So in my alcoholic family system, it was guaranteed that I was going to grow up insecure about waiting for the other shoe to drop. And that is a phrase in recovery. If you go to any meeting, you talk to people, they'll say, oh yeah, I'm like that too. It's like something good happens, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, oh yeah, I get this. Oh no, I'm waiting for the bad news. And then I'll get to the point where my patients will say things like, well, I just don't expect good things anymore because if I expect bad things, I'm not disappointed. And I'm like, oh, that's a horrible way to live. But it's a coping skill. I get it. So again, it trained me on that. It trained me on instability and financial insecurity because we always had to move around and worry about where my dad was going to be able to get a job next. And what's going to happen, what house are we going to live in, what school am I going to go to, et cetera, et cetera. And then, having gone to so many different schools, trying to find your fit and find some sort of stability with peers, being a little bit of a loner because of that, all these influences, people will grow up as adults and they'll think, well, I'm just like that. I'll have patients come to my group and say, well, I'm just a loner, or I just don't trust people, things like that. Say, no, somebody taught you that. And if you can unwind that, you can unlearn it, and you can choose a different teacher to teach you a different way, okay? Especially if you decide yourself you don't like it, okay? We want to change the things about our life that aren't serving us well, that's not working for me, okay? So these influences I got, I'm not dumb. None of us are. We're aware that shit happened in our family, and there's stuff that I need to pay attention to in my bad habits that I still do today. But doing therapy or doing the step inventory work or going through a group and reading a lot and watching videos, it's just amazing how deep that hole is as to how much it's really controlling what's happening today. So let me give you an example of this, all right? I'm outside my meeting the other week, and one of our good friends comes up to me, and we seem to be the only two people left in the parking lot, and sometimes that's when the best conversations happen. That's when some honest talk happens. And this person was telling me that they're going through a process of growth right now spiritually because of what they're doing with their career, that they're looking at their former belief system with shock. And this person's coming straight out to me and saying, man, it wasn't pretty, Christopher. I was racist. I was homophobic. I was sexist. And he's really beating the crap out of himself, because he's having this real gigantic awakening moment about the way he lived based on what he was taught, right? And for some reason, when we were talking, I happened to bring up, I said, well, you know what it sounds like? I said, do you know the origins of the song, Amazing Grace? And he goes, well, yeah, kind of. I said, well, it was a former slaver, a ship captain, that saw the wrong in slavery. And he had his eyes opened, and he could not close them after that. He saw the light about the reality of what he was doing and how it was wrong. And so that's the beauty of recovery is, first of all, being able to do that. That's miraculous. I know most people in this world are probably going to go to their grave stuck in a belief system that's not even theirs. But I, first of all, mostly wanted to tell them, just ease up on yourself, man. You can only do what you were taught. And I'll bet you if you tell me about your parents and then tell me about your grandparents and who knows, your great-grandparents from way back when, they probably were all eaten up with those attitudes and negative beliefs. But what a miracle that this person in relatively young sobriety has done enough work to just be able to see it. And then to see, I don't want to do that. I want to change. And then be open to new ideas. You realize how that's probably the number one cause of this so-called divide in America right now? We're so divided. We're not. We are on certain issues, but we're not. Most people care about their families and having a decent home and being able to afford their groceries, okay? But the division comes out of these belief systems that are in conflict with each other, and then not being able to confront them and look at another person's point of view. And what I really admired about what this person was doing was they're able to see, oh, I never looked at it from this perspective. I never looked at it from this other person's perspective, or I've never walked another mile in this person's shoes. And that was like revolutionary. They were literally having a spiritual awakening right before my eyes, just to sort of put it into words. So that's the key. First, to recognize that I have these teachers, and maybe they did the best they could, as we say in the recovery, but what they did sucked. Or what they did, I don't agree with today, or I don't like it. This especially shows up for newcomers in recovery when around the spirituality stuff, because they'll say, I'm not about that. I'm an atheist. I'm an agnostic. And I got to tell you, after 40 years of recovery and working with people on this issue hardcore and getting them through it, I have come to believe that most, if not all, I'm saying most, atheists and agnostics were made that way by their childhood teachings. So even that was not their own choice. It was something they hated. Somebody hurt them. Somebody said something. Somebody did something they didn't like. And then they've turned into this thing, and they think they chose it. And it's still the influence of their teachers. So do you see how powerful this is, what I'm talking about? This is not a joke. The rest of your life, being able to discern, oh, that's my mom's voice telling me I need to do this. Oh, that's my dad's voice telling me be perfect and don't make a mistake. And that's why I'm so hard on myself. Confront them. Deal with those voices. Tell them to shut up. And then we can shift it, where you can begin to pick your new teachers. Now, this was a totally new and totally exciting adventure for me when I first got into recovery, this idea of realizing I can change my people, places, and playthings, and also change my teachers as to which direction I want to go in for the man I want to be in life, right? So that first starts with us by picking a sponsor. And they say, pick a sponsor who has what you want. Now, I jokingly say my sponsor had a paycheck and money in his wallet and a car that worked and a home and a wife, and it looked pretty good. So that was good enough to pick him. But I also saw that he had the respect of others, that when he spoke, people listened, and he seemed to know what he was talking about, and he was very humble about it, the way he presented. He didn't show off. He was a very soft-spoken man, but there was strength in his soft-spokenness. And that looked very attractive to me. I said, that's the kind of man I'd like to be. And I picked him as my teacher. Then I had another teacher come along that turned out to be my greatest spiritual guide in my entire mortal journey here. I've had several, but this one just made such a difference. Her name was Marion, and she was all of 5'4" with red hair out of a bottle, and just nuttier than a fruitcake, but funny as hell. And everything she said when I first met her, I disagreed with. And that's the surest sign that you found the teacher for you. The one that gets under your skin, where you find yourself arguing and be like, oh, wait a minute now. And she saw me. I fought and cussed and pushed back against a lot. And I would bend her ear after class and just blah, 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 and just be a newcomer, the way we do. And not even realize it was bothering me because it was truth. You cannot upset a person with anything but truth. If I were to say to Dan right now, Dan, that's some terrible purple hair. You need to stop dyeing it right now. He would look at me and say, I think you're back on drugs. I don't have purple hair. What are you talking about? It's not real. It's not true. But if I confronted him on something that's really core and hard and real, he would be like, wait, whoa, that didn't feel good. What are you saying, dude? That's your teacher. These new teachers you want are the ones that are going to challenge you, the ones that are going to ask you to grow, the ones that are going to ask you to step outside your comfort zone. You don't want a teacher just to say, oh, you're fine. No, you're good. Don't worry about it. Don't do any work. You're fine. That's not a teacher. That's what do they call it? Enabler. So finding these new teachers, even though it was hard and challenging, was exciting because I was learning all these new things, and it made me directly confront my computer programming, my computer banks, on what I thought the way it should be looked at. And so I could sit here all day long spiritually and say, well, what I was taught in my church was bullshit. I didn't agree with this, didn't agree with that, especially about guilt and shame and fear and all that other crap around my Lord, my creator, the thing that made me. Fuck you, this thing made me, and it loves the shit out of me, and anything you tell me other than that, you can go kiss my ass. And I knew that even as a child. And so I could be that confrontative about it, but there still was this missing piece that I hadn't found something else or another angle on it. And she was able to bridge that gap for me to be able to start my other new spiritual journey with a new teacher on a new path, right? There's a great story I've always admired. I try to tell it to my patients periodically, although lately it's gotten out of favor. And you may have heard it before, but it's one of the best stories, I think, that explains when you find your teacher what you need to do. So there was this young man that lived in this village, and he was raised there. And ever since he was a little boy, he used to look up at the hill at the monastery and have fantasies about one day he was going to be able to go there and study with the master, because he had heard all these wonderful things that this master knows their stuff, and he's the greatest evolved man, and he has some amazing teachings, and you're just going to love it, but you're going to have to earn your way in there, so you have to wait. And so every day when he was a kid, he would run up to the gates, and he'd talk to the monks behind the bars, and he'd be like, can I get in? Can I get in? I want to get in. And they'd say, oh, you're not old enough yet. You need to go home. You need to do your schoolwork. You need to do your chores, be good to your mother, and come back later. And he did this for years until he was 18 finally. And he ran up there and he said, I'm 18, let me in, let me in, let me in. I said, oh, well, no, okay, we might let you in, but, we'll just slow down, because he just wants to learn. He wants to get in there. And if I ever see that in a newcomer, I'm excited, man. That's what I look for in a newcomer. I look for somebody that's excited and wanting this. I love thirst. I love hunger. I'm like, yeah, bring it. Let's go. Because that juices me up, and then I can juice him up, and we just juice on down the road. So he finally got in, and the first order of business, he was telling them, I want to see the master, I want to see the master, I want to do the master. And I'm like, oh, no, that's not how this works. You have to earn your way to have a audience with His Holiness. You need to do this, you need to do that, and you need to perform well and learn your stuff and blah, blah, blah. And he did this for several years. This went on. He was dedicated. He did everything he was told to do, best he could. And then the day came, he got the call. You have an audience with the Holiness. You have the audience with the guy you've always wanted to talk to. And he couldn't stop. He ran like crazy through the whole estate and all the way through the doors, ran in there, busted them through, ran all the way through the big hall, ran up to the guy sitting over there in the house throne. He ran up there and he couldn't help himself. As soon as he got there, he just starts vomiting everything he's ever wanted to say to this guy. He's asking him questions, and he's saying, well, what about this? And I've always thought that. And I don't understand this. And he just keeps going on, and he can't stop. He is like a sputtering engine that just can't stop. And the Holiness is just looking at him the whole time going, okay. Not being rattled in any way by this energy, but just sort of like, okay, I wonder if he's going to shut up. And eventually he did. He ran out of gas. He just went, and it might have been 15 minutes after he started. And the Holiness got up from his throne and walked down and walked past him and went over to a sideboard where he had a tray with a pitcher of water and a glass. And he brings it over and he sets it down in front of the guy. And the guy's looking at him saying, what's this about? And the guy takes the pitcher and he pours the water in the glass. He keeps pouring, and he pours it right up to the rim, right up to the point where it's going to spill over in a second. And he stops right before it does. He puts the pitcher down. He goes back and he sits on this little pedestal. And he looks down and he says, your first assignment, if you're going to study under me, is I need you to figure out a way to put more water in that glass without spilling a drop. And the guy's like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Is this a trick to get rid of me? I know. So he's looking at it from every angle, and he doesn't even want to breathe on it. Like if he even makes a motion towards it, it's going to spill over. And he thinks they're trying to get rid of him. So he's saying this, and he does this for several minutes, thinking he can figure out the trick. But finally, he just admits, okay, I give up. I just don't know what to do. What do you want me to do here? I don't get it. What do you want me to do? And the guy looks at him, he says, that is how I feel when I talk to you. Right now, your vessel, your brain, your soul, your body is way too full of everything you think you know, everything you think you've heard, everything you think you believe. And since it's so full, I cannot teach you a damn thing. I cannot teach you anything until you figure out a way to pour out some of what you already know. So the lesson there is, when you get a newcomer and they say, I'll do anything you want me to do, I want to learn from you, and then they won't shut up, their glass may be too full. And there's a couple of people in our group we were talking about recently who are spouting off like they know stuff about recovery. And I'm like, actually, they don't really know anything. Yes, they can quote the big book. Yes, they can teach classes maybe, but they really don't know anything about the true heart and soul of recovery, because I don't think they're in an ego place where they can lower that enough to let a new teacher in. And that's sad. That's what I was talking about my friend when I was praising him, that he was able to lower that to see these new teachers had value. People he would have never agreed with. People he would have thrown down and argued to the point of fists in the past. And yet he's able to see the reason that, okay, let me consider that. I'll take it in. And that's what's so hard for us, because we are so consumed by what we think we know. And by what we believe, for sure, because God forbid if I'm wrong with what I believe, that can't happen. And going back to my family system with my original teachers, I will tell you that in my family system, to not know what you were talking about was dangerous, in a way. If you were going to make an argument at the dining room table or in front of the parents or whatever, you better know what you're talking about. And you better be right. And you better never admit that you were wrong. That was huge. Never admit that you're wrong. Even if you're bullshit, make sure you're right. And so what do we do to get rid of that? What do we do to be able to make that happen where I can get a new teacher and let that in, let some of that water out of the glass? Well, I've got some good news, bad news for you. Bad news is it's going to probably take some pain. Pain is the softener to the ego. Pain is the thing that makes us move. Pain is the thing that makes us bend in even the slightest to something new. The good news is if you've had enough pain and you're wise enough, you don't have to go all the way to the basement with that pain. We try to tell newcomers that all the time. Say, look, you're on the down escalator, bro, and you can go all the way to the depths of hell with this if you want. But here's where you are, and if you can learn enough from where you are and then take enough from the meetings to say these other people are right, that lower levels are worse, that will prevent you from going to those lower levels by just taking their word for it. Unfortunately, a lot of us have to go and see it for ourselves. It's not a pleasant process, and I don't like it either. I don't know why life's dynamics are set up like this, but pain is what is the price. Pain is the price of humility and being willing to accept new teachers. Now, even better news, it's worth it. Everything I have in my life today, whenever someone praises me or something I said, I always try to make sure that they're clear on, thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it. I try hard for my work, so my sponsors taught me to accept compliments and take in the love. But then I say, I've had good teachers, man. I've had good teachers. I've had good teachers, because everything I have of value to share on this podcast, to share with my patients, comes from someone else that taught me that. Good teachers, people that knew about recovery and how to love rather than hate, how to build rather than destroy, things like that. But it's all about being open-minded and how willing you are to go, no matter how old you are, too. That's another great thing. I've had patients come into my group who were 70 and older, and because they took advantage of the 12-step journey, they had a whole second lifetime, a whole brand new lifetime that they never knew was going to open up for them. They thought it was over. I'm retired and, I've done my time. My kids are grown. They thought their life was over, but it was just beginning, is what a lot of them will say. So now's the part of the podcast where I like to bring our friend Dan in here to discuss a little bit about the topic. And I hope I've given you some inspiration to think about this. Let's go down that list. If you want to make a list at home, some of my worst teachers. And we're not picking on people. We're not trying to blame them. That doesn't get you anywhere. We're just trying to identify. Yep, these voices are still here. And then, do I see anybody in my sphere around me that's attractive? Do I see anybody that has something that looks like it's working for them? And do I have the courage to go up in the humility to ask, hey, what's that you got? You look like you got some good stuff going on there. What is that? Can you teach me something about that? And you'd be amazed what might happen because of that. I know for a fact that I was open to this brand new gentleman that walked into our art gallery one day. And he just told me he was a musician. And he's doing this project with the Dalai Lama. And I just said, I'm in. Didn't even hesitate. He said something about we could maybe have you come along as a writer. I said, I'm in. and because I said yes, I had amazing exposure to the Dalai Lama that I never would have had, experiences I never would have had in my life. So please don't be too old to welcome in new teachers and try new ways. And let me address one last thing, and I'll get Dan in here. There's always one last thing with me. It's a joke in my group. you don't. We have these things called sponsors in recovery. And if your sponsor is on a spiritual path and continuing to evolve and continuing to grow, that alone can be a new teacher. It's not always necessary that you must sacrifice the old teacher to get the new teacher. A lot of people are confused and think that, oh, well, that means I need to get a new sponsor every now and then. Well, it depends. If your sponsor gets stuck and doesn't really have anything new to offer you and it isn't serving you and not feeding you, yes, I would suggest looking around for somebody new. It also can be valuable at times that I've had sponsees who wanted to go through the steps with someone else and still come back to me after that. And I said, that's great. Go with this new teacher, see what they have, and if you decide to come back or not, that's on you. It's open door. But it's not necessary that you constantly sacrifice teachers that are working for you for the sake of new. I'm more about add to. Let's add to this. Let's add to this. And even in our program, we have sponsors, but we also have spiritual
advisors.
I was going to say guides because that's what I'm used to. Spiritual advisors goes back to the history of the beginning of recovery. And if you don't have one, that might be another option, is that I keep my sponsor and I'm going to get a spiritual advisor. Or your sponsor could be your spiritual advisor if you like what they have. So, but tell me, Dan, especially on this angle, and I'll let you work up to it, but this angle of how we all come into recovery so closed and so determined that this is my point of view, this is my worldview, this is the way I look at things, and how great this program just seeps in to begin to open up your brain and your mind to some new ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the saying, and I've heard people say it, and I can relate to it. It's like the longer I've been in recovery, the dumber I am. And it's not really that's not the case, but I no longer have to know everything, and it actually serves me well, even when I think I might know something, to open my mind to it and set what I think I know aside and listen to a new perspective. It's kind of a hard thing to explain, but I needed to know everything, and I couldn't, just like you said. I don't know who taught it to me, to be honest, but I could not be wrong. The last thing I wanted to do is get caught being wrong. And today that's not the case anymore. There's a lot of value to not knowing in a lot of places. I was telling somebody the other day, most of the time nowadays, if I've got a job that I don't want, I tell them I don't know how to do it. But if I know how to do it or don't know how to do it, because that's an easy, quick, they don't want some dude coming and doing it that don't know how to do it, and admitting that he doesn't know how to do it. I remember you told that one of the first retreats, you told that story about the glass half full thing, and I use it in my sponsorship too, and it usually you see people really relate to that understanding, and you can get them to pipe down. Last thing I want is a sponsee sitting across the room from me saying, I know. Because if you really did know, you wouldn't be sitting across the room from me. But I've had great teachers in my life too, over the years. I can think back at some of them, and at the time when I was, really too young and to really understand it, I had some opportunities probably, got by me. Where I didn't stick with a teacher, or didn't assert myself and put myself in a position where I could learn from them. There was an old tool and die guy at my first full-time job that every time I was around him, I just got like this warm, fuzzy feeling just from being in his presence. And now and again, I'd get assigned to him. And I loved it. And even to the point that when he wasn't at work, I could go sit in his chair and feel his energy from just sitting there. So cool. And that first boss that I had at my very first job there, real job, he was, you could just feel like that wisdom in him. He was a very soft-spoken dude. Almost never got upset about anything, even big time screw ups. He kept his cool. You'd said it before, keep your head when all those around you are losing theirs. I think it's a Rudyard Kipling.
Mm-hmm. That sounds right.
Yeah. And that's, I've heard people talk about that calmness that you see in people who are those kind of teachers. And somebody said it the other day about I picked a guy to sponsor me who looked calm. That was what I needed. I wanted what he had is when what I wanted that he had was I wanted that calmness over there. And now today I've had people say the same thing about me, that not being rattled much, and you just have a calming presence, and that's a awesome compliment. You don't, like you said, you don't, at certain points in your life, you don't get to pick your teachers. You just don't. But later on, and especially in recovery, and I get that thing that you were saying about I'm not telling you to drop your sponsor. But sometimes that is the new teacher that needs to be done. People will ask me, and I'll talk to them, and they'll ask me about, like, I've been thinking about getting a new sponsor. What would you think? And I simply can't. I'll tell them, if you think you need a new sponsor, you should get one. But I can't imagine finding somebody that I want as my sponsor more than my current sponsor. I just can't. I just cannot imagine that. But I certainly could see a point of where somebody come along that maybe I'd want to go through the steps with, and go do a hiatus through the work with somebody, and actually kind of hoping that might happen sometime down the road here, just for a little boost. And I think I'm running out of gas on things to say without your help.
When you were talking about not being able to pick your teachers, another angle on this, and this is really interesting. It's not always the case, but I'd say at least 80% of the time it's the case when I'm doing a first step with a patient. We're going through the history, and it may be an awful childhood, like just trauma everywhere, and just it's like watching a horror story made for TV movie kind of thing. And I'll ask them when the time is right. I'll say, even with all that awful stuff and those people in your life, did you have anyone, could be a coach, a neighbor, a friend, a relative, distant relative, that was a bit of an angel in your path that did give you something good? And invariably, like I say, 80%, maybe even higher, will find someone that say, yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I'm so focused on these bad teachers. I hadn't thought there was actually this good teacher over here. Even if this good teacher didn't maybe even directly interface with them that much, but it could have been an example they saw of something good in life that they wanted to be like. And I said, well, you can use that memory as a teacher today and say, well, that really inspired me back then. I want to be like this person, have these qualities, things like that. And I know you've had a lot of people. You had that person recently you were talking about that you lost, that passed away, that you're like, yeah, I didn't realize it made an impact on my life.
Yeah, he's
just
another
knowing
one.
that person.
Yeah, Billy really did. He just knowing him. And, to be honest with you, Billy was not that great a dude. He was in one respect. But, he was a smoker and a drinker and a womanizer and all, those kinds of things. But he sure taught me a lot. And I was certainly, until, and I didn't really wrestle with that until he passed, and I had some pretty strong feelings, that I wasn't quite understanding. And I linked him up to this dude passing, and I didn't really get a chance to, thank him for for helping me, for what he did for me. He was and you think about that, we're drawn to the negative. We can't help it. We're negative biased all the time. So when you get this stuff going on, you need a good teacher to give you some perspective and get you back turned around where you can get focused on the positive things and quit lingering on any and all the negative.
That's been studied, actually, the scientific basis. Now, we do have personality types that they've whittled down: optimism, pessimist, you might lean more one way or the other, your brain chemistry, whatever. But this idea of leaning towards the negative is because we're problem solvers. And we like to get our mind into something and fix it. And it's also a way to occupy the time, because a lot of life is just standing around waiting. You're going to die one day. There's nothing going on. And so the opposite of a lot going on, nothing going on.
Yeah.
And, so we'll find something, and like people will be deserted on a desert island, have nothing to do, but they'll find something to get into just to occupy, find a problem to pick apart. So I heard somebody in recovery talking about that one time, that our brain will do that even if everything's going great, it'll find something to be miserable about just because it feels like it has to have something to work on or fix or strategize about. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. There's another one of those, Dostoevsky or whatever his name is. Still can't say that, or maybe Nietzsche, one of them. I don't remember. But the thing about that, if they had everything they wanted, if everything was completely comfortable, you're still going to find a way to stir up some shit.
Mm-hmm. Well, all you got to do is watch these housewife shows. The Housewives of Atlanta, Housewives of California, got everything they need, and they'll stir up shit over nothing.
Yeah.
That's every episode.
It's you do, you know, I don't want, hopefully not say enough to point somebody out, but Travis and I were yesterday was just talking about one of these people that you can tell in him that he has that can't be wrong thing, man. I need to be the smartest guy in the room and know something about everything. And he's young in recovery. You know, I have faith that the process will work on him just like it does on everybody else. Mm-hmm. As long as he remains teachable, like he's, you know, that's the flip side of this teacher thing, is making sure that you're in a state to be able to receive it.
So to break that down with a sponsor or a therapist, just to give some people some tools to start, you know, the first question you would ask is, you know, well, whose voice in your head can you hear saying that the most when you were growing up? And use those phrases. Let's put them into words. What did you hear? Oh, you have to be perfect. Or I heard I can't be wrong. Or I had to heard I need to know what I'm talking about. Or don't ever call with your pants down. Because it can be different ways. But once they find that phrase, it's like, oh, that's what I used to hear. Mm. Then it's like, that's the person who said it. So, for instance, in my family, part of the shutdown on emotions, and especially negative emotions, which is devastating for an alcoholic, teaching them how not to feel and not to express their negative emotions. I was pretty much going to drink myself to death if I never found any new tools. But my grandmother, you would say, if we ever expressed anger or just frustration, she'd be, don't be ugly. Don't be ugly. And I'm like, you're judging my freaking feelings. And I didn't realize that as a kid. But I mean, you're saying, oh, well, I'm more valuable and I'm more esteemed if I'm good and happy rather than if I'm, yeah, that's the message in my family. Don't be a frown, smile, be happy. You know, crap, absolute crap. And again, they're just being taught what they were taught. You know, my grandmother lived through the Depression and old school, and you know, and it was like stiff upper lip. You know, we have to get through and survive. We ain't got time to feel your feelings. That's what I mean by 100 years ago in your lineage. There's a lot of crap messages still filtering through to your brain today. The other thing I love about being the student and that analogy of that monk is that, this may be obvious to you all, but I teach it to my patients, and they tell me they never heard it, and I never heard it before either years ago, that the reason why monks shave their heads before they go in a monastery, it's a sign of not knowing. It's a sign of humility, that I'm ready to be taught, that I'm going to let go everything from my old life, my old beliefs, my old ideas, which is what we say in our recovery program. You must let go of all your old ideas in order to be able to taught the new ones. And I was talking about that, I think, the first day of group when our good friend Catherine was in there, and she's going to be on the show in just a few weeks, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be a great story. And she was saying at that moment, she wrote down in her journal, I know nothing. And she still has that to this day, and that served her well on her first day in treatment. Plus the fact that I brought up quantum physics, and she's a gearhead for that kind of stuff, so that caught her ear. But again, your teachers should challenge you. Your teachers can make you angry at first. Your teachers can make you frustrated. Like, what do you mean by that? And then chew on it. Maybe there's an invitation there to go learn something new. Or you can just sit at home and bitch about it and complain to your friends that they shouldn't have said that. And that's a bastard thing to say and blah, 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 that kind of stuff. So think about it. Send us some feedback. We love to get your feedback either in the comments section or directly by mail, where you can also ask further questions about any topic we talk about. Our mail is IM12, the word recovery, @gmail.com. That's IM12, recovery@gmail.com. And we welcome your questions. We have a lot of great questions for today and for the next few episodes, actually. And about anything you have going on in your life. It doesn't matter what it is, just anything, situation, relationship. Can't get along with my big toe, my pinky toes, arguing with my big toe, whatever it is, I swear to God, we will address it. We'll keep you anonymous. We won't mention your name. And it's free. So send us your questions about anything about your recovery path, and or just send us feedback about how you're doing out there. We would love to hear from you. All righty then. Alrighty, folks, this is our question and answer period where you, the listener, get to send in all your great questions, and we'll hopefully steer you in the right direction with experience, strength, and hope. I am a licensed therapist, but I'm here today as another person in recovery doing the trudge, and going to share directly from my heart of what I've seen and what I've done myself, and we'll get Dan's take on these as well. All right, so the first question, we got 3 today. Great questions, appreciate them. Keep them coming in, everybody. My question for you today is, when you're working with a newcomer, how many days a week should they be setting aside time for step work, and how often should you be meeting up with them? Thank you very much. This is a great question. It's what we would call a procedural question about how to meet, when to meet, how to do the work, how do we structure this. And it really is. I don't want to put a blanket statement out here. So again, I'm going to share my experience, but I always encourage everybody to fine tune it as to what you find fits for you as a sponsor, but also what fits with your particular newcomer, because each newcomer has a unique schedule. So you're going to find times if they're working nights or things like that where it's going to be a little limiting as to how you can meet and whatever. One of the easiest tools I found in early recovery that I still do to this day is, hey, let's meet after the meeting. Let's go to this. That's the one insistence I put on my guy. I say, I want you to go out and find as many meetings as you want to go to, and I want you to find your other home groups, but you have to come to my home group. You just have to. It's not an if, and, or but. And since we're both going to be there, why don't we use an hour of time after that? We're already there. We don't have to get dressed and get there and get it knocked out. And it seems to work extremely well. So this particular schedule for me would usually be once a week that we're doing the step work. Now, a lot of people might be like, well, that seems like you're dragging it out. But I'll tell you what it does do, if you want to consider it, is it allows time for reflection and for processing of the material. I feel like if you're speeding a guy through, and I know there's different camps of thought of that in the program, you're maybe doing him a great disservice, because if a guy does not get his first 3 steps right, he's going to relapse no matter what you do. And we lose a lot of people in 4 and 5, and we blame it on the inventory. We lose a lot of people in 9, and we blame it on the amends. But I'm seeing more and more that it was that they hadn't fully surrendered. They didn't understand the process of surrender. They didn't understand the process of talking about lurking reservations and being honest with your sponsor that you may still want to use and have these other thoughts going on. You still want to get with her and get a hotel room. You got to talk to your sponsor. You got to be honest. And then the step 3 part, they hadn't fully let go of the steering wheel, and they're still running the show. And then they just take that power back easy and they relapse. So this one time a week schedule seems to work pretty good, because we go through chapters and then we get to know each other. I know a lot of people jump right into the work. I don't know about that. I think we need to get to know each other and trust each other, because your sponsee is not going to tell his stuff in the 5th step unless you've taken that time to really get comfortable and safe with each other. If I have a guy that's really motivated, though, and if I have the schedule availability, I have no issue with meeting twice a week to get going. If I've got a guy that's really on fire, hey, well, why stall it out? Let's get going. You're finished with this assignment. I would never keep a guy stalled. Don't do that either. You'll let their fire go out. If he's got his assignment done, let's get it moving on. Let's get going. But also make sure he's done it, because a lot of times they'll say it's done and they didn't do what you told them to do. So check that out first before you meet with them. But I would not advise anything more than twice a week. Now, it doesn't mean you all can't get together for pizza and go throw a frisbee and go hunting or whatever you want to do together. That's just recreational, getting to know each other, social fellowshipping. But as far as the step work, there is a beauty to the process. The big book says that in the chapter to the employers that if I had just done this work, I would have returned to work in about 6 months a well man. And I take that as my guideline, that says in the actual AA big book, 6 months is the time frame for the steps. So anybody that's speeding through it or anybody that's taking a year, that's not according to what it says in the book, just if you want to get technical about it. But usually with my guys, if he's motivated, about 3 to 4 months, and then if he's normal, about 6 months. And there's just a beauty to the process. Don't miss the joy in the process. We're so results oriented in America. We want to get there. And you get an alcoholic, and he definitely wants to get there. I had one of my guys in group today says, I don't want to be sober in 2 weeks. I want to be sober 10 years. Oh, it's like, you have to earn it, man. Go through the car wash. Go through the journey. So, but talk to your sponsee and iron it out what works best for you guys. Just don't rush and don't drag your feet. Those would be the two guidelines I would give. What do you think about that, Dan? What works for you and your sponsees?
I am sold on momentum. I believe that's a piece of our formula and why it works good. It's kind of we use baking recipes. So, if you leave something out of the cake, it's not going to be grandma's cake. And grandma's cake also has a cooking time, and it needs to be in that long. So I follow the same thing. I like to meet with them, and there was a little edge on that, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I want to meet. I tell them we're going to meet once a week. I'm going to give you an assignment. I'm going to expect you to have that assignment done when we meet the next time. I like it to be regular too. I like to say, okay, Monday night. But like in the beginning, sometimes I'll step it up if a guy's got is in a life position, whatever, and he's hungry and we want to get going. I'll pick up the pace a little bit. But like you said, I don't have time to meet with somebody more than twice a week. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, that's a push too. In today's lives, in my life today, I don't have the time to do it. Another piece of that question was, I think how much he should actually work on his step work during the week. I thought I heard something to that effect.
Go ahead and take that. He didn't
too.
say that, but I love that angle.
I heard how many days a week should a guy be doing work or whatever. It doesn't really matter to me. We're going to go week to week. And I find, and I did this too, I would read my assignment at the last minute. Mm-hmm. Or not the last minute, maybe the day before we were meeting. One thing I found, if I read it, I'd go home real anxious and go home and read it right away and then set it aside. By the time we're meeting about it, it's a little bit more rusty. It's more fresh in my head if I do that. And I find that my guys do that. But when we get up to fourth step, it's all about, some of it, Scott Lee says it, if a guy's married and got 4 kids, he's going to have to work on his step work at a little bit different pace and a little different way than a guy who's maybe single in a men's recovery home. Mm-hmm. But I like guys to do work 3 to 4 days a week. I think that's, and if they want to go more than that, you got to I found that if they want to work on it every day, you got to kind of keep your thermometer in them a little bit, because it can be a little much for some guys, and they won't realize that chewing on that stuff every day is starting to get them down. Take a break, man. Take a day off. Slow it down. Go every other day. But I think because that's what the pace is going to have to be in order for us to get through to the end of the recipe, and be done in that 4 to 6 months. I want to be done, but in 4 to 6 months. I've had some examples that I've sponsored guys that I accidentally, for one reason or another, life on life's terms kind of stuff. Maybe they had a big crisis in the middle and it caused us to drag it out, and we couldn't work for a little bit. But when you go longer, I see that they don't get the same effect. Mm-hmm. I can point them out and I can talk to you about them, mm-hmm. Of people that somehow or another, I'll say this, I let them go slower and they didn't get the full cup of juice.
And they did say that in this question about how many days a week should they be setting aside time. So, when you say step work, whatever this question is, we do have a formula that in the 4th step, my guy 3 days a week, taking a day off between each day, is going to be working on his 4th step. So there's a set schedule for that. As far as you're going to sit here and say, what are they going to be doing to set aside time for their 1st step or set aside time? I mean, if they're reading a chapter or something, I don't know. I mean, to me, the early part of recovery is we're talking every damn day. So it's whether we're meeting or not. We have too many other tools to stay in touch. So don't give me this, it has to be face-to-face all the damn time. You're being greedy, newcomer. Unless it's an emergency, of course. And then I do think that I don't want to say this. There's all the work outside the work that I don't think people think about. Like, people have this idea you have to have your nose stuffed in the book or at the meeting, which again is another way of them working their program, and every day is going to a damn meeting every day. But there's also that outside time for balance, but also for just letting the healing unfold. You've read Bill's chapter. Why don't you take some time to take a walk the next day and think about it? That's step work. Or why don't you take some time away from your 4-step journal and go fishing and reflect on, some of these people, and, and it might generate more names for your list. So I'm a huge believer in that balance thing. It's terrible for us addicts and alcoholics. We're not good at it. But God almighty, please, those are the two guidelines. I got the best ones. Just don't speed them and don't let them drag their feet. Both those are bad, for sure. Any other thoughts?
Nope.
Okay. So thanks for the question. That's great. And that's nuts and bolts procedural type stuff. And we don't talk about that in meetings. So that's the kind of excellent questions I would like people to send in to just say, I need some clarity on this. I don't have experience with this. All right. Second question. Here's a big one. How do you handle a pregnant girlfriend? Well, I'm going to stop right there. No, I'm just kidding. How do you handle a pregnant girlfriend who's in the program? Okay, that's good. But is trying to impose their will on several occasions. Okay, I get it. But without coming off like you're an asshole who's quoting the steps or the big book. Okay, gotcha. So Dan and I were kind of joking about this question before we started because that's a no-win situation for any man to begin with, no pun intended. It's just that this poor woman is going through hell right now, and she has hormones raging throughout her body. And every old-timer I've ever heard who's been through that directly, I have not, has said, you just got to deal. You just got to support them and just hang on for the ride because they're going to bounce you all over the place with their emotions. So I guess I'm giving you an angle on this question you may not have considered, that maybe this is a temporary condition. Temporary in that as she has the baby and settles down and maybe hopefully doesn't have postpartum, she's going to be more normal. But, us men, we can only sympathize and not have any idea. To have something growing inside you that has its own life and is demanding it's time to eat, it's time to do this. I'm sure this maybe psychologically, this trying to control outer circumstances is because she can't control these inner circumstances. That would be a normal response for a human being. But I hear what you're saying here about not coming off quoting the book and things like that. There is a guideline. I stick to it. It's the best I've ever heard. Mr. Scott Lee, our good friend from Nashville, he says that, me and my wife have an agreement. And she works her Al-Anon program and I work my AA program. And we are not each other's sponsor. But we have the right to ask each other only 2 questions about each other's program. Otherwise, your program is your program, my program is my program. And I'm going to warn you, this is the hardest thing to do if you live with somebody, not to take their inventory and not to try and work their program for them. Hell, it's hard enough to do that with a coworker, with somebody at a meeting that you see. It's like, oh, they're not working their program. But when you live with them and you love them, so he says the number 1 question is, when was the last time you went to a meeting? Which is the best question to ask anybody who's starting to show signs of trouble. And are you willing to call your sponsor about this? So let's say we're having an argument you are having an argument about something, and you reach a loggerheads where you're not getting anywhere, you're just fighting. And you say, okay, let me back up. I'm going to call my sponsor. Would you be willing to call your sponsor? And then let's get back together. Because it's just that perspective of somebody else's take on it will save your life, because we'll get too close to the emotions, and you don't want to say the wrong thing, especially when they're in this condition. This is kind of the time when, you remember those vows you took for better or worse? Well, this is worse, bro, and you got to step up and you got to be the man. And so lean on your supports and lean on other men, especially older men who have experience with this issue. So now I'm going to shut up, since I've never been married and never had a pregnant wife that I had to deal with, and let my good friend Dan the man tell me how he survived. Yeah. 2 babies. You have 2 kids.
Yeah. There's another saying we say around here a lot. This too shall pass.
That's a good one.
Oh, it will, and it did. But it's tough. And I mean, it'd almost be, it'd almost be like being upset with somebody who is just lost their parent and they're grieving, and you tell them, hey, no, don't be doing that. You can't be acting like that, because I mean, it is powerless of that. She can't help it. There's nothing, and it happens. The other thing is, this ain't the first baby. Go ask anybody, and they'll give you this same news, man. It's going to be tough, and if you need to be, you need to be prepared for having a baby and for dealing with a pregnant wife. I can't think of things right off the top of my head like that she did. But the mood swings, man, I mean, from one thing to another in a heartbeat. And I probably wasn't as good at it as I could have been. I wish, don't want to regret the past, but I wished I'd have been in my state that I am today when that was going on. I could have been a whole lot more help, and I probably wasn't. probably wasn't a lot of help.
Your phrase made me laugh because there's a double entendre with that. Our good friend Darren is in the hospital right now passing kidney stones. So he said this too will pass. It's like, yep, she'll have the baby. It will pass right out of her.
Yeah.
But this idea that you don't want to judge someone when they're going through something that you're not going through, because they'll say they got higher ground. They can say, you don't understand. You don't know what I'm feeling. You don't, and you know, well, you don't get into that one. But the other thing I want to do is give you a hell of a stroke, and I think Dan would do this too. You deserve a lot of credit, sir. You are staying sober through this process. And think about whether or not you would have been able to do that a year ago, 2 years ago, however long it's been in your recovery, when you didn't have the tools. And so you're using the tools, you're reaching out, you're asking questions of elders, you're bringing it up. I encourage you to keep bringing it up with other people in the program or at a meeting maybe, and you're staying sober and you're doing the right thing. I can tell from this question that you're trying to do the right thing. So, but generally outside the topic of pregnancy, I'm not a big quoter unless I feel it really serves a purpose. So I'm sparse in my quoting, and especially when I'm sponsoring. And I find a lot of people that quote everything out of the book, none of it retains in the sponsee's mind. But if you choose the nuggets and when the right time to throw them out, they're much more impactful and they remember them. I remember things my sponsor said to me and my teacher said to me at certain times, and it was just one line. It was not quoting a whole paragraph. It wasn't reading the book. It was just one line. Recently, we had somebody in our group who said that their sponsor had them read a chapter and then wanted them to go back and reread it to really make sure they got it. And I'm like, you might be expecting too much of that, newcomer. His brain's a little jelly right now from the drugs and alcohol. And we get what we get. They're not responsible for writing, copying, being able to quote the damn big book. That won't keep them sober. They need to go through the process and find their higher power and feel the feelings and get over the past. That's what's going to keep them sober. So, yeah, I don't know. Words on a page, if that was going to keep us sober, then I guess the Bible would have gotten us sober a long time ago, right? So, but thank you for your feedback, Dan, because, you know, real world experience is what it's all about. And, you know, I believe this baby is due soon, so it's almost over.
Yeah. And then it'll be into the next stage of
we won't even talk about that. That would be like post-acute recovery. Yeah. You know, she's going to be in post-acute pregnancy. All right, last question for today, and it's a little bit more involved. We love it. Send us as much as you got. All right, I started dating this girl, and 6 months into it, she wanted to take a quote-unquote break because she was dealing with her own mental health issues. Well, that's not a bad boundary. That's cool. I told her about the groups and tried to point her in the direction where she could get help without doubling up on her medication. Well, here it is a month later, and she wants to get back together, and I'm just not ready to jump right back into it. I've said this multiple times, and it's just not clicking in her head. How can I go about it without hurting her feelings and while giving me the space that I need to figure out what I want? All right, my friend, great question. And we love relationship questions because it's my personal belief this is the hardest challenge in life and in recovery is navigating human relationships of all variety, not just your partner. Because why? Because we're all different. We all have different needs and different wants, different desires, and we're trying to mesh those together in that perfect combination that you're happy and I'm happy, and it's just not going to stay stagnant. It's always going to be in flow. It's always fluid that, you know, well, she's not happy today or I'm happy today. So what you're doing there is you're trying to communicate with her is like, look, I have these needs and you took time for your needs and I honored that, but, you know, now you're coming to me and saying you want to get back. You're not really honoring what I'm saying. So I will go old school on you first from a male point of view, so forgive me. I'm just thinking about a podcaster I listen to. And they would directly say, do you care about this woman? And I always think that's a great question. You know, like, how much do you care about this woman? I'm not telling you to be an asshole. I'm telling you to consider how much work do you want to put into this? Is this something you really want to say, I do need a break, but I'm interested for the future, and I feel like we can build a future, and maybe you could be the mother of my children, and we're going to have a beautiful future. Nah, you know, you need to be clear about that. Because if somebody's got other issues, like we all do, but if they've got other issues, you're going to be in it for some work and a bit of a slog, and you have to determine, do you love this person? Is this something you want to commit to? And be careful, because for us men, we don't follow this brain. We follow the other brain, if it is a brain, and we don't make good decisions. And we also weren't taught how to step up and speak for ourselves and to set boundaries. Even the term setting boundaries, I still, in the back of my head, it feels like it has a feminine angle to it. Setting boundaries, it's just programming, like we talked about with the teachers, right? So that's the first thing. Talk to your sponsor, talk to your supports, and find out what are your feelings for this woman, because it wouldn't also be fair for you to string her along, and then later y'all get back together and it's still the same stuff, and you're like, oh, this isn't what I wanted, and now you got to hurt her really bad, right? So the little hurts are always better than the big hurts. My spiritual teacher I was talking about earlier used to talk about, if you're going to have to break something with someone, would you rather they just hack away with a dull blade over and over months to take your arm off, or would you rather they just go, and anybody with a brain would say, just go and take it off? And yes, they'll be upset, they'll be whatever, but you have a right to your feelings, you have a right to speak up for yourself, just as she does. And I don't know if a month is really enough time for her to get her issues together. You said she's doubling up her medication and things, and I'm not sure that she did any new therapy or went to a different group or did anything, that was beyond the pattern she was doing. So I'm not so sure how much change could really happen in just a month. But I do hear what you're saying right here, and I look for these key lines. I'm just not ready to jump back in. I've said so multiple times. I'm just not ready to jump back in. So for you, I'm asking you to find clarity on your message. Do you want to keep telling her not now, or do you want to just tell her, I just don't think this is going to work out? And seek out your elders, talk to other people, get clarity. Don't just be in your own head to make that decision. Get some feedback. And if that's what it comes down to, like I say, the quick break is better than dragging it out, always. There's this other aspect, and I don't like it, but sometimes in life you got to use it. That old analogy of a puppy dog following you home, and you're like, no. And they keep following you home, tail wagging, and you say, no. And they keep following you home, and then you got to get mean. And unfortunately, with some people, if they're not listening to you, then when your boundary setting, you have the right to get more forceful and just say, no, it's over. Stop. I'm not taking your phone calls. What's really interesting about this is that this podcaster was reading a letter from a woman who said that here's the key, that if you do have a partner who's pursuing you after you've already broken up, and then they're calling you at just the right time where it feels like they can get back in, this woman was saying the best angle is act completely disinterested, just bored, not even interested in whatsoever, and just like you've got other things to do, and it will make them, I don't know how she said it. She said it will hurt their pride enough that they won't call again. I think that's what she said. It's just human behavior. We're all a little bit weird, and we're all trying to find that fit together with what's going to work. And what works today may not work tomorrow. So please honor your own feelings and get some feedback. But also, if you just want to break up, be honest. I'm ready to move on. It's hard, though, Dan, isn't it, to set your boundaries with somebody and communicate that stuff?
It is tough. And, we've got the old once bitten, twice shy, and doesn't have to come in two bites. I know they will. Like, I love the way you answered the question, because you answered the question and didn't give your opinion.
Just options, presented options.
Yeah, I'm more of like wanting to point out things that I heard in the letter that sound red flaggish to me. And
Like what?
But you said, like you said, that if a month, I might have to ask myself, did she really do some work, or did she just pop me out for a month, and she's the same person, at this time, and I don't know, like you said, how much you can get through in a month, and did she actually do that? I mean, there's kind of some integrity stuff in there too. And then my thing is what you're signing up for. Are you, like you said, are you going to be willing to see what you're setting yourself up for? Here's a gal that's got some issues, there's not, claiming to work on them but isn't, and that can be, you could go through a whole lifetime of that, and if you're, people do. But like the piece of me too knows that nobody's freaking perfect, man.
Mm-hmm.
And you think you're going to get with somebody that don't have some issues, wrong. You're both going to have that, and then that is one part of the thing about having a actual deep, meaningful relationship, is to allow that person to have their issues and work on them and not step on them and support them, and maybe hopefully they would do the same to you, and you could have a pretty goddamn good life. We all got problems. Just seeing if these are the set of problems I want to sign up for.
And can we negotiate on that? And that means both parties have a voice. I do find for a lot of males, we weren't trained in this. Women are adept at speaking their feelings. Men are not. So your partner may spend an hour and express exactly how she feels, and then you're like, go watch football. Because our brain just ain't, it's new behaviors. So, but I do like this not once bitten, twice shy stuff, because if a person demonstrates a behavior, it's more likely they're going to do the same behavior again. So what if she gets back with you and she decides to pop you out one more month? Are you willing to bounce around like that? Is that worth your time? And you also have to weigh each issue that person has. If we can negotiate it, is it because I love you enough I'm willing to put up with that? While still getting your needs met. And that's the most important part of every relationship. Both partners should be fairly satisfied that their needs are getting met. It cannot be lopsided. And I got to tell you, most relationships I see out there, it's way out of whack. You got the codependent, you got the abuser, you got this, you got that. And it's like, that is not fulfilling. Why are you settling for that? And I get it. People are working through their teachings. They're working through their programming to stay in something like that. But I'm a big believer that once you demonstrate one time, I'm watching you. And once you do it twice, and I've made that mistake in the past where I went back. Mm-hmm. And 6 months later, we broke up again. And I was like, I shouldn't have done that. But I was enticed. Like the mob, they drew me back in. So great feedback. Anything else you got to add to that?
No, I don't think I do.
So I love that you're asking. Again, that's the rule of the program. Seek outside counsel and get other people's experience. And also elders' experience. I do think we've lost that since we don't live in tribes anymore. The old guys aren't teaching the young guys, okay, this is what they do. Same thing with the women. Okay, this is what they do. I think the women actually do that better than we do. We don't really do that enough. Because, again, it's that little angle like I'm weak or I'm being goofy to ask about, well, I don't know how to handle my girlfriend. We're supposed to. You're supposed to handle your girlfriend. You're a man, right? Bullshit. So great question. I'm really glad you wrote in, and I would ask you to just please get honest with yourself about what you want, what you're willing to put up with. And we do know, one last thing I'll say is that when you work our program, we tend to be on a certain level that, and I don't mean to just, I don't know, Dan, back me up on this. It's hard to find a partner who's as well and advanced as people who are really working a good 12-step program. Yeah. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say, no doubt. Yeah.
I mean, we all got fucked up issues. I'm still fucked up at 40 years, but I'm not fucked up to the point where I'm getting arrested or where the cops are being called to the house, and that can happen in domestic situations like this. And I'm learning new things. I'm on the path of growth, and that's what I'm seeing is missing in a lot of people. They're not willing to try new things and go on a path of growth.
You're exactly right. I just thought of something too. I was listening to a podcast on relationships and things like that not long ago, just somehow or another. And the person there said, if you want to get the right answers, ask your best friends. People, because your best friends are going to know your partner too, so they will actually be in the mix, and your best friends will have your best, what's that saying?
They have your
best interests in mind. That's that. Talk to your friends. What do they see?
And when you do that, though, tell them you want to hear the truth.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing this other podcaster I was listening to was saying, if you're going to go in there, you're going to talk about another person's woman or man, you're setting yourself on shaky ground for that friendship to end.
Yeah, yep,
You know, you got to
yep,
make sure that
yep,
it's wanted
yep.
to hear the
But
truth.
that's the thing about this guy. He's working a program, and his friends are probably working a program too. So we're operating on a plane where that can work. You know, it's not outside 12-step recovery. You know, in the normal world, be careful.
Mm-hmm.
But asking your best 12-step buddies for their honest opinion, I think you'd be safe in doing that.
Yeah. And these are pretty serious decisions, because if you're
Mm-hmm.
going to decide the rest of your life to be tied to somebody that's not stable, that's not good. So, not that any of us are stable, but you all know what I mean.
But you think about like women who marry alcoholics, you know, and then they come in and they get sober, and they're like the gal waited, and she got, you know, and ended up getting the prince out of kissing the frog, you know. So you never do know. People do, you know, this gal might pick it up in a couple months and decide she's had enough and is actually going to take some action to do something better. And then you could miss out on that opportunity to be there with her on the ride and be what you would be together afterwards.
So here's one last thing to add to that, is the suggestion on the conditions of getting back together. Since you said she had not been to these groups, ask her if she'll go to these groups as part of you guys being together. Say, that's something. If you do that, I'll do something for you. We'll negotiate this.
Participate in your recovery.
Yes, exactly. So, guys, these are exactly the questions we want. We want to hear about real life, not just step work, not just this or that. And, you know, what's crazy is we ask people for questions. It's like, we know you guys have screwed up situations in your life. You can't be human without having something going on. I could dig up stuff to talk about, but it's not about me. I want to hear from you all. So please send your questions to the iam12recovery@gmail.com. That's iam12recovery@gmail.com. And Dan will verify that every day on Polo, I'm venting about my stuff from the world. And here, just send it to us. And not only does it help you, it helps us. It'll help everybody listening. Everybody listening will get benefit from your questions. So it's service work. Okay. All right, we're going to wrap it up for this week. Again, Catherine will be coming up in a couple of weeks. She'll be another great guest for us. We're going to keep doing this for you, but we need your help on one last thing. If you would, please leave a comment below, like, subscribe, all that crazy, stupid stuff. But right now, we don't have a profile on YouTube. I search for us. It's not easy to find us when I'm trying to find stuff for group, and it's like all these other people are dominating. Like there's 3 or 4 names that will dominate boundary topics, or 3 or 4, and those are the first videos, and you're like, they have millions of views. Obviously, they're going to dominate. So, but we need to build our profile so that more people will find this toolkit and this resource. So please, anything you can do to help us with that, we would greatly appreciate it. We cannot do it alone. And the rest will leave to higher power. All right, Dan, we'd like to end with the Serenity Prayer. So if anybody at home would like to join us, it's a great way to end the day and start the day. Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today. Keep coming back. It works if you work it, and you die if you don't. Woo-hoo! Everybody always asks, why do I do that? It's because of having fun in your recovery. That's why we do that. Come back and see us next week. We love you. Peace out.